Hello and welcome back to the Punting Green, brought to you by oddschecker and Priced Up Bets. This is the show where we preview the weekend's golf on the PGA Tour. I'm your host, George Elek, delighted to be joined as ever by Ginger Joe. Joe, it's the Valero Texas Open this weekend, the curtain raiser for next week's Masters. This is the second tournament in a 2-week swing in Texas. No luck again last weekend, but a couple of decent performances. Minwoo Lee winning a dramatic final day on Sunday.
Yeah, brilliant to see, to be honest. He'd been due a big win for some time now. Good timing as well, obviously, with the Masters coming up. Yeah, slightly disappointed with the squad last week. We had Davis Thompson in the lead at one point in round 3. We had Keith Mitchell as well, tied for second at one point, looking like we were going to be going well. We've had this a few times recently where we've been in good position coming into round 3, and they just haven't managed to capitalise then going into round 4. But look, it's part of the game. Got the Masters coming up, a short and sweet squad for this week because of that reason. But hopefully we can pick up a few points before we do head into the first major of the year, George.
Yeah, fingers crossed. This week's event comes to you from the Oaks course at TPC San Antonio. Recent winners, Akshay Bhatia, Corey Connors, who's very popular with a few people. This weekend, we'll get on to whether or not he's in your squad shortly. But what kind of player are you eyeing up for this weekend's test?
Good iron players that don't use too much spin. I want a real sort of controlled iron player this week. Ideally, want someone that does hit a fade, although I do have one player in my squad that hits a draw, but he uses that much spin, actually. He can hold these greens. They're quite difficult to hold, and wherever you go, you want a pretty good short game. Par 72, 7,438 yards long. It is a really good golf course, this. Last year's winner was Akshay Bhatia. Can't have him in the squad for this year, though, Georgie. He would have been well against my sort of calculations for this event, despite winning last year. He just had a really good week. And he managed to fend off Denny McCarthy by winning in a playoff after Denny McCarthy shot 9 under par in at the final round, and then obviously just got pipped in the playoff. But he did still pick up over £1 million for finishing second. So, I mean, it's sort of bittersweet for him at the same time.
Good stuff. Yeah, let's run through the top end of the market with pricedup.bet. As we always say, make sure if you haven't got a Priced Up account already, go and get one. They're going really aggressive with their pricing for most tournaments. I'm sure they will do for the Masters next week as well. And they have price boosts. So they have boosted prices across sports. Every single day there's a price boost tab up on site as well. But these are their prices for the Valero Texas Open getting underway on Thursday. Ludwig Åberg is the 12-1 favourite ahead of Corey Connors at 14-1 and Tommy Fleetwood at 14-1. Patrick Cantlay 18-1, Hideki Matsuyama 19-1, Jordan Spieth and Keegan Bradley both 22-1. Akshay Bhatia, as you say, last year's winner, 25-1, just ahead of Denny McCarthy, the player he touched off last season, at 28-1. Daniel Berger 30-1, Siwoo 35-1, as is Tony Finau at 35-1. Those are the top 12 in the market. Any of those getting into this week's squad, or any of those that you're looking to really take on at a short price?
Yeah, we've got 2 coming from that list of 12 in the squad for this week. I've only got a squad of 3 for this week, with all focus now heading towards the Masters. But I am happy with the 3 selections that I've got. As I said, George, Akshay Bhatia, not for me, despite winning last year. That was a remarkable performance with his sort of game plan and his shot shape, his trajectory. It shouldn't have suited his game, but obviously things like that don't always pan out. He was really, really good around the greens. Corey Connors is going to be popular. He won this in 2019 and in 2023, but I don't fancy him for this week. Jordan Spieth is a player that's coming good slowly, actually. Don't be surprised to see him back in the winners' enclosure this year. Ludwig Åberg
could he even be slipping on another green jacket in a week and a half
you never know. Yeah, he's a player for me that he's just slowly coming to the boil. He's starting to find his old form again, and I'm convinced we're going to see him have a win on the PGA Tour this year. I don't think it's going to be the Masters, but we don't know, do we? Ludwig Åberg, definitely the best player in this field, but on the basis that I might fancy him for another tournament in the very near future, I can't put him up a week before the Masters. That's a trend that doesn't go very well. I think the last player to do the double was Phil Mickelson. He won what was called at the time the Bell South Championship, which was the week before the Masters in 2006, and then he went on to win his second green jacket the following week. But it's not a trend you want. It's very hard for players to back up wins with another win the following week. It really doesn't happen very often at all. I'll tell you what, George, if Rory McIlroy turned up here, this would be the week I would be backing him, despite likely to be a short price. I know it's very much irrelevant because I don't like to back Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy, but he would be an ideal candidate for this week. But out of that top bunch, look, you've got to respect Ludwig, but I quite fancy him for the Masters at the same time. So I don't want that double jinx with the Trends winning the tournament the week before. It's put me off a little bit.
Right, so 3 players in your squad this week. Who's the first? Who's the headline selection?
The first selection is world number 14 and a regular so far on the punting green. It's Keegan Bradley at 22-1. Been in the squad a few times this year, and I have mentioned he's not a very flashy player, but he has still managed to get himself up to world number 11 actually at one point this year. It's just a huge credit to his ability. He's not a big hitter. Doesn't hit a big swoop and draw, a big swoop and fade. Nothing flashy about him. But what he does do is hit greens, and he does it very, very well to a very high percentage. He's taken the major schedules very seriously this year as well. He's had a much better preparation than usual, leaving himself a good gap between some of his tournaments before major golf. And he is effectively using this as a preparation for next week. I don't fancy him at all for the Masters, though. I don't think his game suits Augusta very well at all. But he has had 2 top 10s this year already. And I think he's just ready for a huge performance. Hasn't played in the last 2 Valero Opens. But when he did back in 2022, he did finish tied 8th. And he tied 20th in the Players, which is his most recent tournament this year. He should be absolutely primed for this. His putting is superb as well. You do need a good putter around here. I think everything this week says a lot and ticks the boxes for Keegan Bradley at 22-1. Very generous 22-1 by ProStuck, to be honest, George. And I'm not saying that in a biased way. They have been very, very competitive on the prices.
Yeah, 22-1 about Keegan Bradley, the US Ryder Cup captain, age 38. Later this year, 22-1 is the first selection there for Joe. Who's next up? Who's second?
Next up is world number 11, Tommy Fleetwood at 14-1. Pretty short in the market, but I'd be happy to take a 14-1 winner nonetheless, George. Now, anyone that has been following me for X amount of time will know he's been a little bit of a bogey player for us, Tommy Fleetwood. Every time I fancied him, things haven't gone to plan, but that's going to change this week. Now, he does hit a big draw, which isn't exactly ideal for this golf course, but he doesn't have too much spin. He just stops the ball quite quickly. So I still feel like he's going to be able to hold these greens quite well. There's just something about his game this year. He looks much more in control. He looks much more relaxed on the golf course as well. He's played 5 events so far and finished in the top 20 in all of those. Now, usually there's an asset in his game that seems to let him down, whether it's his driving, his approach, his putting. This year, everything has been possibly too good, if you like. He's been driving the ball well. He's hitting his irons really well. He's got a lot of greens in hitting a lot of greens in regulation, and his putting's been really, really solid too. Now, I don't fancy him at all for next week's Masters, so there's a little bit of a giveaway, and that is part of the reason why I think he's going to go so well this week instead. Actually, I think he'll win this week. I think we'll be talking about him as possibly winning a major next week. It's not going to happen. I think this could be the week for Tommy Fleetwood at 14-1.
So, Joe, I've backed 3 players for the Masters, and Tommy Fleetwood is one of those. So you've done me there. You've absolutely done me. I'm hoping this is going to be the reverse of how you think it's going to go. And we'll see a nice controlled performance this week, and he'll go after putting in his best Augusta performance last year and generally competing in majors. He'll go one better next weekend. That's how I see it anyway. But we won't fall out. Who's third in the staking plan?
My third player is the very much out of form world number 49, Brian Harman at 75-1. A return to form from the club waggler is due, George. 3-time winner on the PGA Tour, a British Open winner as well. He's been very good off the tee. He's been really good with his approach to green as well. He's 21st in the green and regulation standings. He's 23rd in the proximity to the hole. It's his putting that has been the big issue this year, but that's something that can be fixed quite easily, and just a little bit of confidence will do the trick. I thought he should be half this price. Okay, you do need to putt to win tournaments, and that has been a big concern. But everything else in his game is absolutely fine. And when you're starting to reach the major season as well, you start to see some of these sort of high-class players return to a little bit of form. Everything's gone well in his game. It's a simple case that he needs to putt better. Last year, he was superb at putting. He improved as the season went on. I think this is the time to catch him now with a return to form at 75-1. for Brian Harman.
Yeah, 75 to 1. Brian Harman there, the third and final selection for Joe. That gives us Keegan Bradley 22 to 1, Tommy Fleetwood 14 to 1, and former Open champion Brian Harman 75 to 1. Before we let you go, Joe, any in the sub markets, we've got kind of all the top nationalities. We've also got top 5, top 10 finishes. Anything you like there?
Yeah, I quite like Eric Cole for the top 10 market at 9 to 1. He's 20 to 1 for the top 5, but I thought top 10 is the way to go here. 9 to 1 is very, very generous. Player that does very little wrong, goes under the radar, seemingly overpriced in the general market as well each week. And he's a player that ticks all the boxes with regards to the sort of shot shape and trajectory that I'm looking for. And so 9 to 1, I think, is very generous for him. But also Sam Stevens at 5 to 1 for a top 10 finish as well. This is another player that's going to be winning on the PGA Tour this year. It's just about catching him at the right time. But these are two players that do very little wrong, providing they turn up in sort of similar form like they have been sort of this year. I don't see them being too far away. They just sort of missed out on the main squad for this week. Didn't want to put up too many selections with the Masters coming up next week. Happy with the 3 I got. But Sam Stevens at 5 to 1 for the top 10 and Eric Cole at 9 to 1 for the top 10. They're pretty generous prices. If we can get either of those two in the top 10, that covers us for the week anyway. I did consider Denny McCarthy because he shot that 9 under here last year. His putting is a massive asset, but 3 to 1 just felt a little bit short. I think his form here last year has been taken into account. So sidestepped him at 3 to 1. But look, yeah, 5 to 1 for Sam Stevens and 9 to 1 for Eric Cole to finish in top 10.
Yeah, 9 to 1 Eric Cole and 5 to 1 Sam Stevens, top 10. As I say, loads more markets up there. So make sure you check out Priced Up for all of those sub-markets if you want to have another play in those at the Valero Texas Open. Great stuff. Thank you, Joe, for sharing your tips, thoughts and insight. As I say, if you haven't already got a Priced Up account, make sure you go and sign up for one now. You can click in the link in the description or just search pricedup.bet. There you can find loads of different price boosts over the course of different sports most days, and also aggressive pricing on golf, and of course Masters week next week. So we'll be back again to do a big preview ahead of the Masters here on the Punting Green. But in the meantime, enjoy the golf and make sure that you're gambling responsibly.